Freddie Bentley, an Instagram influencer, is wrong to claim that by focusing less on World War II, that will be better for people's mental health. In case you're not familiar, Freddie Bentley this past week said on Good Morning Britain that World War II studies are so intense that children should be shielded from it more, and he doesn't see the benefit from it because of its intensity, and we should instead be prioritizing more recent political issues as well as focusing on mental health awareness. Now, here is why I think Freddie Bentley is wrong. I think he's wrong in his understanding of how mental health and well-being works. First and foremost, let's talk about intense negative feelings and avoidance. We know that this is probably one of the worst ways to address and manage mental health because avoidance fuels greater fear and stress, which fuels greater avoidance, and therefore you're not really addressing any of it, you're only making it worse. In therapy, we work for resiliency. We work for managing people's intense and negative emotions versus avoiding the catalyst for it. And we know that prolonged exposure therapy tends to lead to desensitization, to where individuals feel more in control of their negative emotions rather than that they cannot tolerate them at all. Now let's talk about Freddie Bentley's logic and reasoning. He's basically articulating a zero-sum mindset, where in order for one thing to be accomplished, another has to be eliminated. In this case, studying about World War II. He advocates instead for more focus on current events, which I wholeheartedly agree, but I don't think it needs to be at the expense of or anything that has to do with our history. In fact, more studies are showing that people are becoming more ignorant about World War II and seeing how hate crimes and racism seems to be on the increase worldwide. I don't think it's the time to be minimizing studying the impact and lessons from World War II. Now, he cites specifically Brexit or climate control as two issues to be studying in education, and I wholeheartedly agree. However, those are current events that there's a lot of differing opinions about. So instead of just purely teaching that, I think our education system would be wise to be teaching critical thinking skills, the ability to debate and articulate an argument while also challenging other people's point of views, while also endorsing the part of their argument that is sound and logical. I also think a better way to be addressing young people's mental health is to be teaching them coping skills and tools that they can use to manage their intense emotions, like mindfulness, deep breathing techniques, cognitive reframing. I would argue for those types of coping skills versus going about it from an external locus of control, which is where we remove the external catalysts and variables for intense emotions. In cognitive behavioral therapy, the basic premise is that you change your behaviors and your emotions by challenging and replacing either irrational or faulty beliefs and thoughts. And in this case, his understanding of mental health enhancement and well-being is greatly flawed. So I would encourage him to change his thinking about avoidance rather than develop a different way of thinking about stressors. Now, I have nothing against Freddie Bentley. I have nothing against Instagram influencers or people expressing their own personal opinions. I do, however, want to offer some alternatives and some free advice for Mr. Bentley. First, I would really encourage you to step back and use this as a learning opportunity to reassess your beliefs on the matter. Because I'm here to tell you, at least from the mental health standpoint, the conclusions that you draw are faulty. They're just plain wrong. This is an opportunity for Mr. Bentley to exhibit a growth mindset, an opportunity to learn from this experience rather than to dig in, become more rigid and defensive, and double down on his position, because he is patently wrong in his understanding of mental health. I appreciate his advocacy, but I want that to be tried and true, proven tips and tools for mental health and well-being, rather than coming up with a solution that, quite frankly, will probably make his mental health worse than better. So what would I recommend to Mr. Bentley for dealing with intense emotions? Well, I would encourage him to seek out a book called The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. The Happiness Trap is a great resource in learning how to make space and room for negative emotions rather than avoiding them or feeling like they are all bad, because a life devoid of negative or intense emotions is just unrealistic. It's inevitable. You're going to feel them. Now, to wrap it up, I'd like to give Mr. Bentley some free advice about how he can respond to his dismissive and insensitive remarks about World War II and specifically the Holocaust. Number one, he made it about his own intense and negative emotions, and he's free to express his opinion, but in doing so, he really dismissed those folks that were greatly impacted by the profound trauma and loss of World War II and Nazi Germany and Japan. And so I think he really needs to step back and use this as an opportunity for some personal growth and exploration about the subject matter. I'm not here to condemn him. This is really an opportunity for Mr. Bentley to learn and grow from, I think, an ill-advised public statement he made about World War II studies and mental health. I encourage you to seek out and watch the 6-hour documentary Shoah, which is a Holocaust documentary that's broken down into 3 types of interviews: survivors, bystanders, and perpetrators. And that really gives a very profound and up-close understanding of how the Holocaust impacted everybody involved. Finally, my biggest advice to Mr. Bentley is this: talk to real-life survivors and veterans of World War II. Humanize this experience rather than reduce it to a footnote in your history lessons or your intense negative emotions. The fact is that World War II is one of the greatest human rights campaigns that have ever happened. And the more we can learn about its impact as well as how we got to that place in human history, the better we can hopefully implement those lessons here in the present and avoid other catastrophic atrocities like World War II in the future.